What if I told you that the woman standing beside you right now, the one you've built your life around, might be someone you don't actually know at all? Not because she's lied to you, not because she's worn a mask, but because you've never truly tested the foundation beneath the surface. You've never looked beyond the chemistry, beyond the words, beyond the promises whispered in comfortable moments. And here's the unsettling truth most men never face until it's too late. Comfort reveals nothing. Comfort is where people hide. It's in the cracks, in the pressure, in the silent tests that no one talks about, where a person's true character emerges from the shadows. Let that sink in for a second. We spend years with people, decades sometimes, and we think we know them. We think familiarity equals understanding. But familiarity is just repetition. It's the same patterns playing out in the same comfortable conditions. And those conditions, that comfort, it's like a stage with perfect lighting. Everyone looks good under perfect lighting. The question is, what happens when someone turns the lights off? You see, we live in a world obsessed with connection. We chase the spark, the feeling, the butterflies in the stomach. We build entire relationships on chemistry and assume that if the emotions are strong enough, the foundation must be solid. But chemistry is just a feeling. Character is a pattern. And patterns don't show themselves when everything is easy. They show themselves when the ground shifts, when the lights go out, when comfort is replaced by uncertainty. That's when you discover whether you've been building on rock or sand. Most men discover this too late. They discover it after years of investment, after they've intertwined their lives, their finances, their futures, with someone whose true nature only surfaces when the test arrives uninvited, and by then, the damage is done. The illusion shatters, and they're left standing in the wreckage asking themselves one haunting question. How did I miss this? How did I not see what was right in front of me? But here's what most men never realize. You didn't miss it because you were stupid. You missed it because you were never looking for it. You were looking at the performance, not the person. You were measuring the relationship by how it felt, not by what it revealed. And feelings, as powerful as they are, tell you nothing about character, nothing about integrity, nothing about who someone becomes when the world stops applauding. But what if you didn't have to wait for life to deliver that test? What if you could create the conditions quietly and intentionally to see who someone really is before you give them the keys to your heart, your trust, your life? That's what we're talking about today. Not manipulation, not games, but observation. Strategic, intelligent observation of the two silent tests that reveal a woman's true character. Tests that don't require confrontation. Tests that happen in the margins of everyday life. Tests that separate the women who are building with you from the women who are simply benefiting from you. Let me tell you about Marcus. 34 years old, successful entrepreneur, the kind of man who built himself from nothing. Started with barely enough to eat, worked 3 jobs while finishing business school, clawed his way into opportunities that most people only dream about. He met a woman named Vanessa at a networking event. She was magnetic, charismatic, the kind of presence that turns heads when she enters a room. Their connection was instant. Within months, they were inseparable. She admired his drive, celebrated his wins, told him she'd never met a man like him before. She'd text him every morning with words of encouragement. She'd show up to his events. She'd tell her friends he was the one. Everything felt aligned. Everything felt real. Then Marcus hit a rough patch. Not a catastrophic failure, but a real challenge. One of his business ventures stumbled. A partnership fell through. An investment didn't pan out the way he'd projected. Cash flow tightened. The luxury dinners slowed down. The weekend getaways paused. He was still fine, still stable, just temporarily recalibrating. Still the same man with the same mind and the same heart. But the external markers of success, the ones that sparkle in other people's eyes, those dimmed for a season. And that's when something subtle began to shift. Vanessa's texts became shorter. Her enthusiasm dimmed. The morning encouragement stopped. She started canceling plans last minute. Started mentioning other opportunities, other men who were doing really well right now. She'd say things like, I ran into Trevor at that gala. He just closed a huge deal. Or, you remember Kyle? He's launching something big. Not overtly cruel, not directly hurtful, just small cuts. Little reminders that her attention was wandering, that her loyalty had a price tag. She didn't leave immediately. She didn't have to. Her energy did the leaving for her. The moment his value in her eyes decreased, so did her investment in him. Marcus didn't confront her. He didn't need to. He simply watched. He paid attention to the pattern. He noticed how her affection was tied not to who he was, but to what he was achieving. And what he saw was the answer to a question he should have asked sooner. Who is she when the spotlight dims? Who is she when I'm not winning? When I'm not impressive? When I'm just a man trying to navigate a difficult season? The first silent test had revealed its answer. She failed. Not because she left, but because her loyalty was conditional, transactional, tied not to him, but to what he represented. She loved the winner, not the man. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. He ended things quietly, with clarity, and without anger. Because anger is what you feel when you're surprised. Clarity is what you feel when you've been paying attention. This is the first silent test. The test of adversity. The test of what happens when your stock drops, when the winds pause, when life reminds you that nothing stays perfect forever. Does she stand beside you, or does she start scanning the room for exits? Does she lean in, or does she lean back? Does she ask how you're doing, or does she start distancing herself from the struggle? Because here's what most men never realize. A woman's loyalty and comfort tells you nothing about her loyalty in crisis. Anyone can stand beside you when you're standing on a mountain. The question is, who's still there when you're walking through the valley? And here's the thing, most men don't realize. You don't have to wait for life to deliver this test. You can engineer it. Not by creating fake problems or manipulating situations, but by simply observing how she responds when you're not at your peak, when you're tired, when you're uncertain, when you're human, when you admit you don't have all the answers, when you show vulnerability, when you're sick or stressed or simply having a hard week. Watch what happens. Watch if she moves closer or creates distance. Watch if she asks questions or makes assumptions. Watch if her tone changes, if her patience shortens, if her interest fades. Because real character doesn't show up in the highlight reel. It shows up in the behind-the-scenes footage that no one posts online. It shows up when the music stops and the lights come on and you're just two people standing in the truth of who you actually are. That's where you find out if you have a partner or a passenger. That's where you find out if she's with you or just along for the ride. Now, let me tell you about Daniel, 28 years old, kind-hearted, generous to a fault. The type of man who holds doors open for strangers, who tips well, who genuinely believes in seeing the good in people. He met Claire through mutual friends at a birthday party. She was sweet, soft-spoken, thoughtful, the kind of woman who seemed to care deeply about people. She volunteered at a local shelter. She talked about wanting to make a difference in the world. She seemed gentle, compassionate, real. They dated for 2 years. Daniel was all in. He introduced her to his family. His mother adored her. His friends approved. He talked about marriage, started saving for a ring, began planning a future together. And then one evening, something happened that changed everything. They were at a restaurant, a nice place but nothing extravagant, celebrating a small promotion Daniel had received at work. Their server, a young woman probably in her early 20s, was clearly having a rough shift. She was polite but frazzled. She mixed up their order, brought the wrong side dish to Claire, nothing major. A simple mistake, the kind that happens in restaurants every single day. Claire's reaction was immediate and disproportionate. She snapped at the server with a coldness Daniel had never seen before. Her tone was sharp, dismissive, laced with contempt. She said, "Are you even paying attention? How hard is it to get a simple order right?" The server apologized profusely, visibly uncomfortable, her hands trembling slightly as she took the plate back. Claire barely acknowledged the apology, just waved her hand like the person in front of her wasn't worth the effort of basic decency. Like she was swatting away an insect. Daniel sat there frozen. Not because of the incident itself, but because of what it revealed. For 2 years, he had only seen how Claire treated him, how she smiled at him, how she spoke to him, how she acted around his family and friends, people who mattered in her world, people who held value in her social economy. But in that single moment, he saw how she treated someone who couldn't offer her anything in return. Someone with no power, no status, no value to her world. And the mask slipped. He didn't say anything that night. He paid the bill, left a generous tip, and drove home in silence. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop replaying the look on that server's face, the way Claire's voice had changed, the ease with which cruelty had rolled off her tongue. He started paying attention after that, really paying attention. He watched how she spoke about people behind their backs, how she treated wait staff, Uber drivers, customer service reps on the phone. He noticed how she'd mock people she considered beneath her, how she'd laugh at others' misfortunes, how kindness was something she performed for an audience but abandoned the moment that audience disappeared. The pattern was undeniable. Kindness for Claire wasn't a character trait, it was a strategy. She was kind when it served her, charming when it benefited her. But strip away the incentive, and what remained was something cold, something transactional, something that made Daniel realize he had been dating an illusion. He ended the relationship a month later, not with anger, not with drama, just with the quiet understanding that he had seen something he could never unsee. The second silent test had done its work. This is the second test, the test of how she treats people who can't do anything for her. The waiter, the janitor, the stranger who holds no social currency in her world. Because how someone treats people in low power positions tells you everything about their character when the facade drops. It tells you who they are when there's no audience, when there's no benefit, when there's nothing to gain and everything to reveal. You see, people perform for those they need to impress. They're polite to bosses, charming to potential partners, respectful to those who hold something they want. But strip away the incentive, and you see the operating system beneath the interface. You see whether kindness is a core value or a convenient tool. And this matters because one day, you might be the person with no power in her eyes. You might be the one who's sick, struggling, or simply no longer useful. And if her kindness is conditional, you'll find yourself on the receiving end of that coldness you once watched her aim at strangers. Both of these tests, the test of adversity and the test of how she treats the powerless, operate in silence. They don't require interrogation. They don't need confrontation. They simply require awareness, the willingness to watch, to notice, to let the truth reveal itself in the margins of everyday life. And here's what makes these tests so powerful. They can't be faked over time. Someone can perform kindness for a day. They can act supportive for a week. But character is a pattern, and patterns require repetition. You can't sustain a performance when the cameras are always rolling and you don't know you're being observed. Life delivers these moments organically. Your job isn't to create them artificially, it's to pay attention when they arrive naturally. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about the woman you're with, or the woman you're considering building something with. Have you seen her in adversity? Have you watched how she responds when things don't go her way, when you're not at your best, when the path gets rocky? And have you observed how she treats people who hold no value in her social economy? Not just once, but consistently. Because one act of kindness is a moment. Consistent kindness is character. These aren't just relationship tests. They're life tests. They're the difference between building something real and investing in an illusion. They're the difference between a partner who walks with you through the valleys and someone who only shows up for the peaks. Let me be clear about something. This isn't about cynicism. This isn't about approaching relationships with suspicion or distrust. It's about approaching them with intelligence, with discernment, with the understanding that love without awareness is just hope dressed up as commitment. And hope is not a strategy. Hope is beautiful, but it's not enough. You need to see clearly. You need to know what you're building on. You deserve someone whose loyalty isn't conditional on your success, someone whose kindness isn't reserved for people who can offer something in return. You deserve someone who sees you as a human being, not a resource. Someone who treats the waiter with the same respect she treats you. Someone who stands beside you when your value in the world's eyes drops because her value system isn't tied to external metrics. She measures you by who you are, not by what you achieve. And if you're watching this and realizing you've never applied these tests, don't panic. Don't spiral. Just start paying attention. Start observing. Not with judgment, but with clarity. Because the truth will always reveal itself if you're willing to see it. And seeing it early saves you from learning it painfully later. Let me know in the comments from which country you're watching this. I'm always curious how far these messages travel. And tell me honestly, have you tried one of these silent tests before? Type 1 if yes, and share what you discovered. Type 0 if not. I'm watching the comments closely to decide which tests we'll share next. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Character is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It shows up in how someone behaves when no one's watching, when there's nothing to gain, when the conditions aren't perfect, and the quality of your life, the depth of your peace, the strength of your future, all of it hinges on your ability to recognize character when you see it and walk away when you don't. You're not here to fix people. You're not here to hope someone grows into who you need them to be. You're here to observe, discern, and choose accordingly. Because the right person doesn't need testing. They pass the test naturally without even knowing they're being observed. That's what real character looks like. Awareness is your shield, wisdom is your weapon. Protect your peace.